At a rally against carbon tax over the weekend, some Albertans began chanting this about Premier Rachel Notley. Federal Conservative leadership hopeful Chris Alexander is seen in the video smiling as anti-carbon tax protesters chant, "Lock her up," in response to his comments about Rachel Notley. Now, Alexander says he didn't approve of the chanting. He tried to get the crowd to switch to "Vote her out." Chris Alexander joins me now from downtown Toronto. Mr. Alexander, appreciate your time and appreciate you coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I want to give you the opportunity to clarify what happened from your perspective there, because I know you were lambasted on Twitter initially because people felt you were leading the "Lock Her Up" chant and saying the "Lock Her Up" chant. Here's your chance to set the record straight.
Sure. Well, that was untrue, and the people who made that accusation on Twitter walked it back. When I heard people switching from an otherwise very passionate but civil meeting that had been going on, including during my much longer speech of 10 minutes, to this chant that came from south of the border that was unpleasant in every way, I was shocked. I was taken aback. And it took me a while to understand what was going on, the depth of the anger that was being expressed, and then to try and take the discussion back to vote her out. And my next words after that chant were, let's use our power, let's use our conviction at the ballot box next time. And so I absolutely dissociate myself from that part of the meeting and from those words. I didn't use them, I didn't initiate them, and I don't think we should ever be calling for unconstitutional, illegal approaches to our politics. My reason for being in Alberta is because people are hurting them. And there were people in that crowd who've lost their jobs. 100,000 private sector jobs have been lost in the oil patch since this downturn began. And those people really fear and know that this carbon tax brought in by the Notley government is going to make things worse. And that's why 2/3 of Albertans are against the tax already. And I think as people realize what's going on, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, there's also a pipeline coming, though, and that's been good news for the province, but we can touch on that later if we have time. I just want to go back to what you said. I appreciate you clarifying your situation there, but you didn't, as the person who was speaking to the crowd, as the person addressing the crowd, you didn't stop them or chastise them necessarily either from chanting "Lock her up."
Well, I don't think it's up to us, either as politicians or media, to chastise a crowd who is saying something very spontaneously on the basis of real emotion. That anger is real. And I think we've got to stop lecturing people on how they should feel and what they say and start listening to them. I listened. I was taken aback. I didn't agree. I went on to talk about the ballot box. But I was proud to be in Alberta because people are hurting. The pain is real. And people see their prospects going up in smoke. Yes, there will be one or two pipelines, we hope, but that's a totally different issue from the carbon tax. The carbon tax will, in the view of these people, and in my view, take jobs away, export jobs, take oil production elsewhere, and continue to punish Albertans. It's an echo of what we saw in the 1970s and 80s in the form of the National Energy Program. It's a policy that is going to hurt an entire industry and an entire province in this case.
The understanding, though, or the implication is, were there not a carbon tax, the pipeline would not have been granted. So it's hard to, reconcile both.
Yeah, but that's the kind of mistaken logic that the Alberta NDP has been using, that our federal Liberal government is using. There is no reason why we can't transport Canadian goods safely via pipelines. It's much safer than rail, and have the best tax system, favoring reduced emissions, but also favoring the creation of jobs in Canada. That's what we had for 10 years when we took emissions down and grew the oil industry simultaneously. We need to get back to that.
Mr. Alexander, we've got about a minute left. We've seen a lot of hate directed at female politicians in Alberta recently. MLA Sandra Jansen just spoke about her ordeal last week. As someone who's running to be leader of the Conservative Party, and you've seen this anger firsthand for yourself now, how do you plan to address that?
Well, I think we need to engage absolutely, without exception, in civil discourse, in democratic discourse. We need to show respect for one another. We need to listen to one another and work together. I was part of that piece that the National put together following Senator Jensen's ordeal to draw attention to online hate. We all deal with it. We all face it. You and the media face it. And it doesn't have a place in our democracy. We have to create space for women politicians to come into politics in greater numbers, for everyone to have their voices heard. We need citizen engagement, and hate and the poison that it represents keep people out, and that's a shame. So I'm in this race to try and be someone who's treating everyone politely, who's listening to everyone, who's bringing everyone together so that we can find solutions that work for Canada and for our economy.
Mr. Alexander, in future, if you hear that chant, "Lock her up" again at an event that you're attending, what will you do? Will you try to stop it?
Yeah, well, I think I'll be even more energetic than I was this time. It was my first encounter with that particular phenomenon. And yeah, I think we need to get people focused on solutions. It was a sunny day. There were thousands of people there. There were families there. There was a lot of frustration, but on the whole, it was a very positive atmosphere. And I would invite your viewers to take a closer look at the videos, take a closer look at the hours of speeches that were made. They were polite, they were without profanity, they were constructive, and they point the way towards a better future, a better government in Alberta and at federal level that will simply create more jobs for Canadians. That was the takeaway from Saturday for me.
Conservative leadership candidate Chris Alexander, thanks for your time.